Hey folks, in this episode of The Proprietary Transformation, we interview Justin Rezvani, who's an entrepreneur that's fresh out of an earnout. And what that means is typically when founders sell their company, there's a period of time that the founder ends up, or the executive team also ends up being required to go to the acquiring company and spend some time working at the acquiring company to help integrate things and get things set up. So he's completed all that, and he's done with his previous previous company. So we talk a little bit about what he's doing now to fill his time, because to me, it's very interesting that an entrepreneur can spend so much time working on something and develop all of these skills and this intellect around solving problems, which is really what entrepreneurship is. It's interesting to think like what happens when you don't have any business problems to solve, and we kind of explore that. We talk about some things that he's doing around biohacking right now. We talk about some longevity stuff, which is really what he's passionate about recently. We talk about entrepreneurship generally and kind of what it means, and we talk about some things he did when he was younger to be successful, and some things that he thinks attributed to his success as an entrepreneur. I have two young kids, and coming out of this interview, there's a lot of things for me to think about, that I need to make sure that I expose them to make sure that they have an opportunity if they decide to start a company to be successful. So there's a lot in here. Hope you guys enjoy it, and let's get started. Welcome to the Proprietary Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Smoots. In this podcast, we explore, there's no real we here. It's just me, and I really kind of just ramble for a few minutes on different technology or business topics. Sometimes I'll actually interview some smart folks as well. So if that's the kind of thing that you like, enjoy. Welcome back. I'm here with Justin Rezvani, who is the former founder and CEO of theAmplify, who I guess he's in an in-between state right now. So we'll hear all about that. Thanks for joining us, Justin.
Thank you, Jimmy. Long time.
Yeah, no, man. When was the last time we sat down? A couple years ago?
I think about a year and a half ago. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, in the marina, right?
Down in the marina.
Cool, man. So why don't you just kind of walk us through theAmplify, what the company was, and we can kind of start there, and we'll talk about some other stuff as well.
Great. So we were still are a tech company that helped brands work with the biggest social media influencers in the world. And the focus on the tech was how you can search for, activate against, and measure the impact of your influencer-based campaigns. So we were an end-to-end shop that allowed you to find them, activate them, create content with them, distribute that content, see how it did, and then run that loop all the way back, really focused around data and analytics.
Cool. And you were working with mostly large brands, right?
Yeah, Unilever, the Codys of the world. So Unilever has brands like Axe, Dove,
so like
Cody,
legit guys.
big brands. Yeah, our minimums were quite high to engage. So it was like, it only made sense to go to the biggest brands in the world, which was exciting, but it also kind of brings this interesting dynamic when you have these big companies involved.
Yeah. So talk more about that. What's the dynamic there? Like what's if people are thinking that, hey man, if only I get Unilever, all my problems would be solved. Like what, is there a truth to that, or is that kind of a...
Yeah, I think the thing is that obviously the contract value when you engage with such a large client is an easy thing to help drive sales. Because imagine you have one client driving $3.5 to $5 million in revenue just off one insertion order for a 6-month campaign. So imagine you have 10 of those, you have a $50 million business pretty quickly. That's, I think, the edge that's really exciting. But then the other side of it is it takes about a year and a half to engage that exact program. You're not going to get $3 to $5 million just off of one phone call or one meeting. It takes quite a bit of work. And then you have to have a system built to drive that scale. At one point, we were doing 150 million unique impressions on social, real viewable impressions in 6 months, which with influencers probably isn't the easiest thing if you think about it. Yeah. That's hundreds of people, thousands of pieces of content. So you have to have a system to back that up.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then so the influencer market specifically, means that you have to kind of operate with both sides, right? So you have, on one side, you have these big brands who I'm sure are very demanding. And then the other side, you have the influencers.
Creators,
who are, I'm sure, have personalities, right? What's it like working with that side of the...
Yeah, I mean, so my first job before this was at a company called ValueClick, which was kind of buying mobile ad banners and stuff. So the inventory was just a website. Now we're converting that inventory to an actual person. So there's dynamics, there's attitudes. So running a double-sided market isn't the easiest thing in the world, but I think the biggest thing that we drove is says, hey, how can we build the best tech to streamline the entire process on how these two worlds engage?
Cool. And you sold that business, right?
I did. So I sold the business in April of 2016.
What's that feel like?
It's life-changing, right? So, the acquisition was about 26 months after launch.
Wow.
So basically the story is pretty cool. We grew the business organically at a few million in revenue our first year. Second year, we had a few million in profit. And then someone said, hey, we're really interested in partnering with you. And for me, I was 26 at the time. So, I'd been running this business for 2 years. I was like, I'm so excited. This really big, influential company says, we want you to be a part of it. This changed my life. It changed the trajectory of everything. Obviously, the infusion of cash was game-changing for someone at my age. I didn't have money starting this business. My parents didn't have money or anything. We were mortgaging houses to pay off, to just cash flow the business. We were profitable, but not cash flow-wise. Cash flow-wise is almost impossible to do. So it was quite life-changing. And then in December, I officially left the business fully as CEO, and now I'm free and clear.
So what made you want to sell it? I know it's a different answer for everybody, but what made you kind of want to?
So for me, I knew in my heart this was not going to be my only business, and I really was. I was more driving for a partner, right? So I was running this business on my own. I really didn't have any co-founders. I owned most of the equity in the business. And I said, I want someone to help me come in and scale this thing to the big behemoth that I think it could be. So that was one of the biggest factors, was saying, hey, can I bring in a partner to help me grow this and build this to this other level? The other thing is also it's a monetary equation, right? So how many years would it have taken me to grab that same amount of real tomorrow cash to leverage to do the things that I want to do? So it was part of financial and part of partnership opportunity. And I knew this was just the beginning of my narrative, right? This is not, I'm 29 now. I have a little bit of time to figure out what I want to do next. But the good thing is I have a base to do that.
Okay, cool. And, it's actually interesting having so much success so young, right?
I wouldn't say I'm that successful, by the way.
It's more successful, I think, than a lot of people would envision themselves at 25, 26 years old, including myself. How do you keep it from screwing you up? I just think about myself when I was 26 or 25 years old. You give me some exit money and I might choke on it. How do you keep from partying that away or buying Lambos and just screwing your whole and just ruining everything from BS?
I think where I came from and the base my parents built me to and the structure that I have was a big part of what I wanted, what was ingrained with me as a child. So I did not buy a car. I did not buy anything flashy. What I did with my money was I bought a house that I lived in. Now I'm renting that house. I bought another duplex income property, and I live in a small duplex now, and I rent out the back, right? These are ways that I'm creating income in all these different ways. I don't even have a car. I have one car that I use just to drive here and there. Small old car I've had for 12 years. So I didn't actually do any of the things that I think a normal, whatever kind of exit entrepreneur would do. I think I had a really good grounding, a really good base. And I'm really fucking hungry. At the end of the day, just because I had this little thing means nothing to me. That's why even after I've kind of left the company and I technically don't have a full-time job, I'm training for an Ironman right now. So I'm working out 5 hours a day. I'm reading, 6 to 8 books a month. I am still 100% focused on growing and learning. I've just applied it to a different thing.
That's interesting. So you got a lot of self-development stuff going on.
Right now, it's a huge self-development circle right now. I'm trying to grow like mentally in a big way because I know that I neglected that for a long time, right? I was about 50 pounds over the weight I am right now when I was running the business and when I was deep into the business. I was 240 pounds. And I knew I was self-neglecting my diet and all the things that I think I want for longevity, right? Like at the end of the day, I'm not trying to live here till I'm 50. I want to be here till 150. That's my goal. And I'm hacking the way to that right now.
Cool. What kind of, you doing some biohacking? I think you mentioned before.
Yeah.
What do you, what kind of stuff are you doing there?
Yeah. I mean, I've basically spent the last, I think, 6 months probably trying to read every health book around longevity. And run longevity research, and then kind of long-term energy and kind of how ATP actually gets converted into energy in your mitochondria, and really focused on that. So one of the big things I've been trying out is this ketogenic diet, and mostly focused on becoming a fat-burning machine versus a glucose-burning machine. And a lot of that is I'm trying to kind of work on some pre-cancer things. You know, there's signs that everyone has cancer, and the concept of how do you actually use ketosis and more specifically fasting to rid your body of cancerous potential cells. I mean, I don't eat till usually 2 p.m. every single day. I'm having a juice with you right now, but I worked out for 2 hours this morning, and I came here and I haven't had a single thing to eat.
Wow, so this is actually kind of fascinating to me. So you did the business thing, and the business thing was pretty successful. I'm sure there were hacks and things that you employed to kind of get that to success. And it seems like you're applying that to, the health and wellness related things. So is there a common thread between, the two? Is there something?
100%. And I think the common thread is massive action. And I think this is the one thing that I think a lot of people underestimate. There's a book, this guy named Grant Cardone writes this book called The 10X Rule. And he talks about this thing, massive action. I didn't actually read it till like about 2 months ago. So I didn't really see his concept, but that's what I do every single day, right? So the concept is that you have to take 10 times the effort than you actually think you need to take to get to one point, right? So I was making 150 phone calls to meet with brands every single day. In order to prepare for my race, I'm not only working out every single day, I'm working out probably 2 times the amount that I need to do. Also, I've gone to become on a ketogenic diet. Also, I'm fasting all at the same time. So in order for me to make these massive strides in a shorter period of time, I'm adding multiple hacks along the way that make it a lot more challenging. But I think it's the concept of massive action, taking action over what you typically think you would need just to excel in whatever you think that you want to do. And I think for business, that was the most important thing for me. Was I spent more hours in the office than I think than most people. I never lived for the weekends, right? I had friends every year were like, we're excited to go to Coachella. Coachella didn't fucking mean anything for me until maybe a year ago that I went once, right? And I went with a buddy. But besides that, I never did these things when I was running the business, unless it was a work event.
Really? Okay. So what, clients or something like that?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I didn't have a vacation until I sold the business.
Right? Now, okay. So do you think, I mean, this is obviously, we're talking about the future here, but do you think that in the future you're going to continue with a lot of the biohacking stuff, or is it something that you're kind of applying your intellect to now? Because in place of maybe the business or something like that, do you think?
No, I think some of these things. I don't know if I'll keep doing Ironmans, to be honest, because the time you need to train for this is ridiculous. But I think some of the techniques it'll stick with me, right? I think the fasting, like I don't eat till 1 or 2. To me, I think I could stick with this for the rest of my life. Reason is that I'm so effective from the hours of 7 a.m. to like 1 p.m. that once I eat, I just get a little bit more tired. And that's how everyone is, right? Because your food's digesting and it moves all the power over there. So I think the fasting thing will stick with me. The ketogenic diet, I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to stick with it just because it is so hard to do. Like fundamentally, I can eat 10 things really. And the amount of fat I need to consume, it's a little bit tougher. So we'll see. I think I'll be going in and out of phases. But I fundamentally believe, and I wasn't kidding when I said this, I think humans can live to 150, not just on a medical perspective, but what we're learning about the body now and how much research is going into mitochondrial health and all these like really different things. I want to live to 150.
Wow. Okay.
I really do. And I think I can.
Yeah,
I really think I can.
So what about, business projects? I know you've been doing some investing and different things like that. Anything that you're not on right now that you're interested in?
I'm nothing really on a business perspective. I think that I'm diving into. I'm an investor in a few companies here in LA. A really exciting one called Wonder. Also a new age IoT coffee machine called Spin. So I'm helping those founders kind of drive their strategy and how they're thinking about things on a marketing perspective. But I am being very conscious about what I get involved with next. I think one of the things that I think happens often with entrepreneurs, and sometimes this happens and people make mistakes, is they dive into something very quickly right after they're finished with the thing they've spent 6 years of their blood, sweat, and tears on. So I'm being very conscious about not getting into anything too fast, but I'm helping and looking at everyone's like projects and really I don't want to be off of it, right? So I'm speaking once a week. I'm helping my friends with their podcasts or being on their podcasts, and I'm dibble-dabbling of starting potentially my own to start these conversations.
That's cool. Yeah, podcasting is great, actually. I think it's
I love it, Jen. Thanks for having me, Jimmy.
Yeah,
this is awesome.
This is great. Thank you. So how do you stay creative? I think you've had some success, and I think everybody kind of envisions just kind of like going to a beach and just having like Mai Tais.
No.
Like, so how do you stay creative? How do you keep invigorated? And then how do you, come about, coming up with that next idea?
I think the narrative is all around continuing to be a practitioner in what you do, right? So, what I was always great at was I was a marketer. I understood technology and I wanted to be ahead of the curve. So for me, I'm constantly reading not only what's up with the trades, but I'm spending a ton of time with friends that are still actively in the industry to still continue to be a practitioner. I'm not sitting back, and again, like I was sharing, I'm not sitting back hanging out at a beach. I'm not taking 2, 3, 4 month vacations. I'm focused on this new thing that I'm working on, which is my biohacking and kind of my Ironman, but I'm also focused on learning consistently. I'm reading trades. I'm still in the game, and I still do things like this to stay on the game, and I'm specifically doing panels and marketing things to stay in the game.
Great. And I think you said you were reading like 6 or 10, something like that.
6 to 10 books a month on average.
So how does that work? I mean, we were kind of talking that before I started recording. That's a lot. I mean, it's just the throughput there is a lot to digest and everything. Like, what's your
so Audible is a good catalyst because I can get at least 3 hours in of reading per day on Audible, and that's imagining like I'm walking to a coffee shop, I'm getting 15 minutes, or all these different. I'm getting snippets throughout the day, or I'm going somewhere. I have headphones in almost every 10 minutes, so I have that. Then when there's something that I really want to like read physically. I'm using a technique that my buddy Jay Shetty introduced, which was he was reading about a book a day. And what he would do is that he describes it on his, he's got a video online. And what he does is he first looks at the top chapters that he's most interested in. And then he goes to those specific chapters and reads the first sentence and the last sentence in each paragraph. And if it's interesting, he'll read the whole thing and highlight that specific paragraph. So he sectionally goes through the book and finds the thing that he thinks are most important. And that's how he actually gets through a book. Because if you think about it, and I've seen this now, most books, the first, even if you're doing on Audible, first hour and a half is just intros of like what I think, what I'm thinking about. But the guts are always in the middle. So why don't you just go for the guts of the book?
Yeah. Do you, this is something I've been doing actually recently, which is kind of stopping once I get the gist of whatever.
Oh, 100%. And I let it massage.
Yeah. Because, for some reason, I think, at least in business books and a lot, I think probably most of stuff that's been published, there's like a small amount of actual information that's in there. And then there's 250 more pages of just either examples or whatever. And it's kind of like you don't need all of those.
You don't need all of
two or three, and then you can just stop and kind of throw it away, which is hard, right? I think it's really hard to do. So
I agree.
It sounds like you've been doing that.
I agree.
Anything you've read recently that you...
Sapiens. Sapiens. I mean, I cried at the end, right? And the reason, I'm not a big, I'm like kind of getting it right here right now, but like the end of the book challenges humanity and says, we don't know if Homo sapiens are going to last forever. We're probably going to create our next species, which I agree on a lot of these things. what is your legacy on this planet? And it just gave me this rush of, what are we spending a majority of our time on? What are we doing to grow as humankind? And what are we doing we want to, project to the next generation that comes after us? One of the scariest things that I'm seeing right now, and if you look at the research, our kids, and this is the craziest thing that you think about, are going to live shorter lives than us as parents for the first time ever in human history.
Wow.
Because of things like diet and all the things that are changing in the world. Yeah. That topic is very scary to think about. And when you add that to the Book of Sapiens and what's happening in the world, it just gives you a whole other perspective of like what matters and what's going to be important for the long term and how we think about human existence.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe some philanthropic type stuff is what you'd be interested in doing next, or
I think that's an aspect of it, but I think one of the biggest things that it will relate around is health and wellness, and health being what you put in your body. Like one of the things that I think people over understand about health is a skill. Health is not something that you're born with, that you automatically understand, that this is how it's supposed to be. Health is something that takes time to understand, takes time to understand your body. And just like shooting a basketball, just like running, it is a skill that takes time, that takes adaptation, that takes things that you have to spend a good amount of energy to understand how to build health and create health for the long term.
That makes a ton of sense. I never thought of it that way. Makes a ton of sense. I think I'm going to write that down. And I'm going to memorize that one. I think that one's going to go in the snippet at the beginning. Anyway, so let's just talk for a second about starting theAmplify. I think when we met, you were working as a media planner. Oh no, I think you were
media planner.
Media planner. No, I think we met when you were in college, I think.
Oh, we met when I was in college.
Yeah,
way
you were
before
running
that.
the AMA,
The AMA. That was back in the day. That was 2010, 2011.
Yeah, man, a long time ago. So you did that, then you were a media planner, and then you started, or you did some sales stuff, and then you started theAmplify. What made you want to start a company? Like, what was that driver?
So I think I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. I mean, I was a guy, like if you look at, what is your first story about being an entrepreneur? I saw these number tags, and I'll give this for good context. I saw these number tags at Home Depot, and I bought some spray paint. And what I did was I wrote a letter for my neighborhood because I would see that the numbers on the curbs, this is pre-Google Maps, right? The numbers on the curbs, you couldn't really see the numbers in my neighborhood anymore. So I wrote this letter saying, in an event of emergency and you need firefighters to come to your house, we want to make sure your street numbers look good. So I'll paint your street numbers for $10. And I would put this in the mailbox, and I was basically painting people's street numbers for a whole summer, and I made like $2,000 in a summer doing this.
How old were you?
I was 13.
Dude, hustling.
Yeah,
that's a hustle right there.
That was when I knew, and then we could upcharge $5 extra for your trash cans as well, just in case you wanted to upcharge. So that was like how I started the thought process of being an entrepreneur. And as you know, in the media industry, media planners and low-level employees don't get paid much money. I mean, very, very low. I think my initial opening salary was like $36,000 a year.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
It's brutal, right? Yeah. And so I said to myself, look, and I had friends that happened to be influencers per se, because they were like Keegan Allen and Francia. These are people I went to high school with. And Instagram just got bought by Facebook. So I said, hey, is there an app to connect these people with brands? And in 2012, 2013, there was no app to do this, right? There was no mobile app. Now every company has an app. So I said, I'm going to build an app to connect these two people. And can I make $37,000 a year? $1,000 more than what I was making, doing something on my own that I care about, that I have pride in, that I want to build. That was the catalyst that got it going. That was the saying, I can do this myself. And to be quite honest, I thought it was way fucking smarter than everyone I was working with. And I was treated like shit. Really? Like fucking Gray Stripe treated me like fucking shit. I was like the scum. And now I've made 10,000 times the amount of money of the people that I was working with. And I say that because I think that also was a big catalyst for me to leave, right? Like when you treat people like shit, like they figure out other things to build. And, I'm excited for where my trajectory is. But yeah, those were the catalysts that kind of made me do what I want to do.
So, okay, I want to kind of explore that a little bit. So let's
go deep.
Not that part, but more just kind of that hustle from, I think you said age 13, you were doing the spray paint deal.
Yeah.
I literally called it the spray paint deal. Right?
We can call it the spray paint deal. That's
right?
Cool. I like that name.
That's so interesting. Like, what do you think, like, where do you think that comes from? Like, is it a nature thing? Is it nurture? Is it something you saw?
It's both nature and nurture. I mean, my father was an entrepreneur, right? So, and growing up, I didn't see him much, right? He left at 5 a.m. He came at 8 p.m. He was working all the time. And then at nighttime, I remember this very, like when I was about 11 or 10, I would help him put things into QuickBooks and put his invoices into QuickBooks. And this is how I thought life was, right? Like this was life. This was, you go very early in the morning to go run your business. You come home late. You talk about how that business is kind of everything that runs for the family. And this is how it is. This is how things run. So when you're ingrained in that building, the concept that you are not doing things for yourself just don't translate in my head. I don't have, those wires don't fit for me. That like you don't work for yourself and do things for yourself. So everything has been determined in that route for me just from where I was built and from where I was going. The other thing I also was convincing myself is I think I'm a free spirit generally. Like I do things that I want to grow, I want to learn. And there's no concept of freedom working for someone else. Ever. If anyone tells you that, they're full of shit and they're lying to you. The only way you are truly free is if you're creating your own path and building your own trajectory. You can't do that working for someone else. And even on the monetary side, it's impossible. It is impossible. I mean, you look at, one of the great books to read is if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the concept of that, great book, classic book, right? I love that book. Yeah. And I love that book. I didn't read it again until I was a little bit older and I realized my dad was pretty much Rich Dad the way he thought about things. He didn't have as much money as Rich Dad, but the point was like the amount of money that's taken away from you as an employee right off the bat is you can never get to that point ever because 50% is taken off the top. And if you run a business, it changes the game.
Yeah, this is something I had a friend of mine I had a conversation with, I want to say, maybe 6 months ago, and he said something interesting. He said, if you're an employee, the value you generate for your company is always going to be a multiple of what you receive. And it's hard to like internalize that. Meaning like if you make $300K a year, how much are you worth to that company? Are you worth 600 grand? Are you worth $1 million, et cetera?
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting thing to think about. Like they wouldn't hire you at a loss. It'd make no sense to hire you at a loss. Like why would they do that, right? They only hire you if they can make money outside.
Unless you're backed by venture capital. And there's a lot of people that do that.
But even then, like
I'm kidding. Yeah. I'm totally kidding. Yeah.
But even then, if you're a VP of sales or something like, and you're responsible for $20 million in revenue, but you're only pulling down $500,000 a year, like you're responsible for $20 million in revenue. Like 100%. That's the value you bring to the company. It's really interesting to think about in terms of that.
That's to me, it was always 3x. Like if you're not, like for me, I looked at those numbers very strategically. If a team was not providing 3x on top of what they were making, they were not valuable as a team. Reason being is that if you're trying to drive a 30% EBIT company on top of 30% of revenue, and that's what you're trying to drive as EBIT, you need to have 3 times the value of your salaries in order to make those numbers.
Let's talk about that. So did you have a spreadsheet where you had the teams lined out or employees, or how was that structured?
My Bible, and this is where I think some entrepreneurs, my Bible was my financials. My financials was what I woke up every day reading, was what I went to sleep. Because all the other shit is bullshit. Your numbers is what make you run or make you die. Sales are what drives the business and what doesn't drive the business. So yes, I had a sheet besides QuickBooks that I looked at every single morning. I looked at the cost of good sales of every campaign that we did. I looked at the cost of every single item that went through the business up until I sold the company. Every single number, every single penny. Why? Because it related to the bottom line that I took home at the end of the month or money I had to put back in. For someone that launches a business that doesn't raise money, your first employee, you realize how much that's out of your pocket. That's what you've gotten to pay that off.
Is.
That literally is what that feeling is. You are taking it out and saying thank you. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying if you don't master that, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And I don't like those people that say that they let other people handle the financials in their business. If they still own the entire business, I don't know how someone does that.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. So I want to talk more about that. Get deep on that entrepreneurship thing, and we keep digressing into some great stuff. But I just want to talk more about. You kind of mentioned it's almost like a calling. It sounded like there was something inside of you that kind of drew you to this, and it's partly stuff that you learned or saw through working with your father and those kind of things. What does that look like? How does somebody who's a guy who works at yourself at 23 or whatever, sitting at I think you said Gray Stripe, right? How do you recognize that you have that calling inside of yourself and that you should really catalyze that and bring that out and take action on it, as opposed to just I think a lot of people just kind of sit there and say, it'd be cool to start a company. And if but it's too hard or whatever. Like,
yeah.
How do you recognize that and realize that that's important to cultivate that?
So I knew. I mean, when you work at a company and you're at the bottom of the totem pole, no matter how smart you are, I think you're suppressed. I think your ideas are suppressed. I think your thought processes are suppressed. And I saw so many times over and over that I knew I had something that would help this business grow, but my concept was suppressed. And I knew that if I stuck around, if I stayed in that suppression, I would live a life that was not fruitful. I would live a life that's depressing. I would go home every day hating my job and hating my life, and I knew that I never wanted to be that type of a person. So it was almost a negative activity that drove the positive aspect to say, I need to go do this on my own. Even if the concept is to fail, I'm failing forward. I'm failing in a way that I'm growing as an individual, and I'm doing shit that 99% of people don't have the fucking balls to do.
It almost sounds like it's not a choice. Then.
It was not a choice. I mean, like,
it almost sounds like you can't not do it, right? It's just you're compelled and you can't, right?
There's nothing else to let you do it, and I have to thank my dad so much for driving this in me of saying, all the things I'm telling you, these are things he told me as a child, and I grew up ingrained in this brain and studied and I believe it. I believe it in my heart so much. But the other thing that I'll counteract about this entrepreneur thing is that it's really fucking sexy right now, right? Like the thing to run your own business.
Is it really?
It's like, it's this sexy thing. But people, like no, I know, but people think, whoever's listening that is thinking about running a business, unless you're really ready to like eat shit and like go through really tough stuff, don't fucking do it. And 99% of people are not ready to be entrepreneurs. There's a lot of great number twos. There's a lot of great number threes, but there's a lot of people that are not built to do this. And it's unfortunate, but it's the reality. You can't have a ton of leaders out there. There's a ton of tribes, but not a ton of leaders. Because the failure might hurt you more than just sticking with what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's almost like if you're the kind of person where there literally is no choice, you just got to take action.
It's a self-awareness exercise.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing that we're missing, right? There's this deep, I meditate every morning as a result to just get my body in check. There's a massive level of self-awareness that you need to get to this place to say, hey, I want to do this. I was lucky because I did it early on in my life because I was forced to based upon how I was brought up. I knew that I had to do this eventually. It was just how early I wanted to do this. But this comes down to self-awareness and just understanding who you are as an individual.
So outside of meditation, what else do you do to kind of cultivate that self-awareness? It's kind of hard. A lot of people just don't even want to be with themselves, I find, which is really funny to me. It's like I'm the kind. This is kind of a weird side cursor. Like I'm the kind of guy who loves to go see a movie by myself or just do stuff by myself.
That's why we're friends, Jimmy.
Yeah. So I kind of find it weird that some people are like, oh man, that's kind of weird. It's like, no, dude. Like sometimes I just want to be alone with my thoughts for a couple hours and do and eat some popcorn and like zone out or whatever or ignore what I'm watching. So how do you cultivate that self-awareness? Like what's the What's the process? Is it eat a bunch of peyote and go into the mountains, or like what's the?
No,
Yeah.
but I think plant medicine is very important in growth, 100%. But that's a different tangent that we can talk about a little bit later. So I think because I was running this business on my own, basically I was running this company on my own. I spent 6 years on my own, right? It's really lonely being an entrepreneur. And that's where I learned in terms of going to dinner by myself, spending weekends by myself, being with my thought. That's where I started learning it. What I do now is I do a lot of self-help work, from writing my kind of morning letters, writing grief letters. And I go to the mountains on my own. I was in June Lake for a weekend and I just went by myself. I got a tent I took out and I said, I'm going to be here by myself for the weekend. I'm going to read and I'm going to focus on just practicing, just being still and being by myself. But it's all about mindfulness practice, right? It all comes back to this self-awareness thing that we want to build and we want to grow. And I think what often happens with people is that they think being with themselves is the scariest thing in the world, yet they suffer every single day. But what they'll find is that the self-suffering is they're creating is because they're not spending enough time with themselves.
I actually completely agree with that. That's interesting. You do the hiking was it camping?
Camping.
Basically?
But I also do hikes, I do
Yeah.
runs, I do all this stuff
Yeah.
it's fine to do it on my own, right? It's okay to do that.
Yeah. One thing I've also noticed, I got a lot of friends who are founders, and for some reason, a lot of founders are fascinated and kind of subscribe to the concept of self-help. Right. And it's kind of a contrarian thing, because if you talk to a lot of, I guess, non-founder types, they're like, oh man, that self-help stuff is bullshit or whatever. Tony Robbins is an asshole. Like, screw that, But it's really weird, because when I talk to and when I look at people who are amazingly successful, they all subscribe to this way of thinking. Like, why do you think that is?
Because outside perspective is the way that you can grow. And as an individual, no matter how self-aware you are, having a level of outside perspective to help coach you and grow you in a new way will give you that 10x return on who you are as an individual. I spend an hour a week with my therapist. Even though she's not here, we do kind of video calls. And no matter what I have to talk about, even if I'm feeling great or I'm not feeling great, we unpack things together. I'm reading self-help books. I've done Tony Robbins seminars for a week basis to help and grow. I think it's naive to believe you can just live on your own and you'll be fine, because we spent 100,000 years not doing that, right? We spent 100,000 years living with a tribe, growing with individuals in a family. And the number one requirement for us, not only as children, but as adults, was we had 100 or 30 or 40 people around us helping us grow as individuals and grow our mind. And if we're going through something, to be there for us. People unfortunately right now have this concept of family that's going away. More people come from broken families than they do from close families. So let's say if that's you, I'm sorry that happened to you. What are you going to use to substitute that? You can't just go and live without having another perspective. You can't support just on your girlfriend, your wife, or your partner to be that person for you, because you're in that relationship for another reason. You need a third perspective, I believe, this is just my opinion, to get to that next level of consciousness. It's not just going to happen on your own.
Cool. Okay, so let's shift gears again. Talk about kind of some more macro trend stuff. You're an influencer expert, and by the way, I think the Amplify was timed perfectly.
Yeah, 100%.
The timing on that was amazing.
Yeah, if any earlier or later, it would have been not so good.
Amazing timing. How do you see that an influencer marketing space panning out over the next few years? Do you think, what do you think is going to happen with that?
Look, I think it's changing tremendously, because I think we're seeing diminishing returns on those experiences, right? So this big creator partners with this big brand, does a video, does it sell more of that product? I think we're definitely seeing diminishing returns, and the data tells us that same thing. So the industry is shifting. What I'm really excited about, and I don't know if you saw, I did an article, I did a kind of talk with the BBC, I think the next level of influencers are going to be AI, right? So an actual AI-built personality or a cartoon or something that's a derivative from a human that becomes a digital influencer that people are engaging with and creating content with and collaborating with. So another perspective of another human is a really exciting point of where we're going. But I think the concept of brands kind of using an external company to manage the influencer side, I think that's evolving and changing. They're going to bring a lot of this in-house, just like they bring email marketing in-house, just like they bring other things that they need to have in-house. I think there's going to be a shift in what influencer does.
What are your thoughts on all of this Facebook data, this Cambridge Analytica thing that's going on right now?
So the data that Cambridge Analytica had, if you understand Facebook's ecosystem, wasn't something that was very special. So like really funny, most companies that have permission-based APIs within the Facebook graph have access to this data. So I think that they made it a really big deal. And I think the problem is that I think people are very naive to privacy. And I think that what's going to happen, what I think is that we're going to go through this thing like, oh, we really want our data and all this stuff. And then I think it's going to die off. And then once people realize that there really isn't a level of privacy, the veil is going to fully open up to see, well, what are the capabilities that you'll have? There's also another side to the argument that I think there's going to be something that comes out where humans can now create a vault of their data and be able to selectively sell it to where they want to receive compensation. I think what we're seeing is that stuff with blockchain very specifically is that the capabilities of being able to own and transfer things without a single point server system could be very interesting with the decentralized server. And I think what Brave's doing is really interesting for advertising, right? So giving the browser data back to the individual and they choose to receive ads or compensate creators effectively.
I think quite a bit about privacy, and where I always kind of land is people don't seem to care. It's like people kind of care, but and some people canceled their Facebook account because of this whole thing. But a lot of people just said, fuck it, who cares, right? I'm still using Gmail, I'm still using Chrome, I'm still like, I talked to my wife about this, probably a couple years ago. She was like, I don't really care who has my information as long as I don't know the person, which is actually really interesting. Asterisk. Like she's like, if like my friend can see all my Facebook, my pictures, I don't want them to see or something. That's kind of weird. But if it's some random nameless guy, in Google, I don't really care about that, which is really interesting to me. I just question like how. I've thought there could be an interesting business in that space, but I don't see how it could ever happen. But that's my little.
We'll talk about it right after we turn off the mic. And see what we'll build around that.
Cool. So we talked about your favorite book. Any other, or your most recent favorite book? Any other books that you've read that recently have been impactful?
Oh man, so many. Sapiens is definitely the top of the list right now. Oh. I think a classic for any entrepreneur is The Hard Things About Hard Things. Ben Horowitz.
Ben Horowitz book. It's a great book.
I think that one is so just classic of just grinding and hurting and fighting. That would say top for, I think, entrepreneurship. But man, I gotta look. I agree with you. You were telling me a little bit earlier, like you start reading a bunch of stuff and it all blends together.
Yeah.
I'm getting a feeling for what that is a little bit right now.
Is there a specific productivity tool or anything that you use every day that you love?
I don't look at my phone in the morning.
Wow. Okay.
I don't look at my phone for 30 minutes to an hour in the morning.
It's like when you wake up, I just
meditate, shower, get my. It's right there. Well, this is the thing that got me kind of like fucked up on this thing. 87% of people in the world in the morning will grab their phone before they say good morning or kiss their wife or partner.
It's true. I think that's definitely true for me.
That's fucked up.
My wife's usually asleep.
Yeah,
I mean, like a baby in there. But
no, I get
it's
it.
True. Yeah.
No, so that's one of the first things. At nighttime, I put it away about 30 minutes before, so I don't even touch it. No TV. If I have it on, maybe I have an audiobook running in the background, but I have it. I never sleep with it in the bedroom. It's always downstairs, charging away. I use another thing as an alarm. I use like a regular alarm if I need to wake up in the morning.
An old alarm?
If I don't, sometimes I have Alexas in every room, and then I also just say, Alexa, turn on an alarm for me, and Alexa's there to do that as well.
Okay, cool. So what do you wish you knew that you now? Well, sorry, what do you know now that you wish you knew 10 years ago?
Wow, 10 years ago. 10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years.
Fuck, 10 years ago. What year was that? 2008?
Yeah. Doesn't need to be anything genius.
I mean, to me it was like I think patience was the hardest thing that I learned over time. So like just having this concept of like, it's going to take a lot longer than you think. So just focus on where you're going as a path. Don't worry about kind of how long it's taking you to get there, or you're not feeling that you're getting there fast enough. I think because patience like hurt me a lot, right? Like when I wasn't doing things as fast as I thought I should be doing, I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I wasn't good enough to get there. And I think the concept that I am good enough has been something that has been tough.
How'd you overcome that? What was the
a lot of therapy, man? A lot of therapy, a lot of self-awareness, right? Yeah. And I think
Tony Robbins, that kind of thing.
I mean, I've done a week business mastery with Tony.
How was that, by the way?
It was good. I mean, it's good if you're like. If you're deep in the roots of your business, you already have a couple million in revenue, and you want to figure out, I think, how to take it to a next level. It gives you a good playbook on how to do that if you have a great team. If you're really small, I don't think it makes sense because you don't have the tools to accelerate. And if you're super big, you should already have most of those tools in hand. So like, I think it's great for $1 to $10 million revenue companies. That's what I think. And it's good for the C-suite and a team that can go and say, okay, because they give you this great book. I think I have it in the car. It's a great playbook of saying, hey, you follow these 10 steps. And to me, everything that I did in business, it rationalized it just in a much easier way. And if I had that book, it just made it would have made it a lot easier to get to where I think I was going.
Okay.
Because I could have operationalized it a lot quicker and built it out.
Okay. And I sidetracked you. We were talking about how you overcame that kind of sense that...
not good enough?
Yeah.
So this comes back to, I think, and this is the unfortunate thing about what happens sometimes in life generally is that, and I think I'm seeing this a lot, is a lot of kids, I was not one of these kids, but a lot of kids grew up where their parents had so much pressure on them that what they did was not good enough. What they grew up saying or what they grew up doing or their grades were not good enough or what they were excelling in sports were not good enough. So they grew up ingrained that everything that they did in their life wasn't good enough. And it creates this pressure, internal pressure that you consistently have in your life that I think hurts your growth. That was something that, I felt a little bit when I was kind of getting into college, that, am I doing my best? Am I good enough? Am I all this concept? I didn't get it necessarily from my family. I got it from external sources, right? Because we go on social media, we see all these entrepreneurs that are doing so well and they say, hustle, work harder and all this stuff. So there's a double-edged sword there because you see, hey, these people are so good, and it's compared to me, they're so amazingly good. Why am I not good enough? Why am I not getting to that next place? So I tell people all the time, you are fucking good enough. You're great enough where you're at. Just continue to grow, continue to be a good person, and don't let that bring you down.
Okay, so let's talk about some more advice. What advice would you give somebody who comes, say, a college kid comes to you and says, "Hey, man, I want to start a company." What advice do you give to that guy?
I'd ask a lot of questions, and mostly around why. Why are you deciding to start a company? What are the things that you're thriving for to build this business? And what tools do you have in your arsenal to be able to do that? That's, in terms of advice, I don't actually give as much advice as I just give perspective and saying, if you want to do these 5 things, if you don't have these things prepared, you're going to get punched in the fucking face a bunch of times to get to that next level. So, I think it is good to work at a company for a little bit of time. before you jump right into saying, I want to become an entrepreneur, because you actually understand how challenging it is to build and see things. I think it was great that I had a job for 9 months because it gave me perspective. It gave me this other level of saying, okay, this is what it's going to take. But you got to be really clear on how you make money. That's the biggest advice, is that you want to start a business? Great. Tell me how you're going to make money. Because that's about it. It's not about starting a business. It's how you're going to make money.
It's all about the investors, right? Just the VC. I just got to get the VC.
That's going to, I think there's a big, when the market correction happens in the next 18 months, which it has to, just cyclically it has to happen, all this beautiful money that's being driven and thrown around in places it's not going to be there. Because I'm on the other side. I'm the one investing in startups, and I'm seeing the other side of what's happening in that world. And without strategic, I see twice a week, I see a plan. At least once or twice a week, I see a plan. And the number of questions I ask, how the fuck are you going to make money? How are you going to make my money back? How are you going to give me my money back and more?
Yeah.
Because investing isn't just because I'm fucking have money, I'm going to give you money. Investing is I'm expecting a legitimate return.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
All I want is returns. That's every investor, right? Some have bigger Paul, some have small, but you got to think of it when you're on the other side. I don't know if that was a good answer.
No, I think it was a great answer. And then, so something you said that was really interesting, and this is actually more for me. You mentioned perspective versus advice. I think when people come to me with something, I jump right into giving them advice. I'm just like, advice. And I almost like bang people over the head with advice, and I think it's bad. This is something I'm actively working on. So where's the demarcation? How do you, what does perspective look like versus advice?
Advice is telling someone what to do. Perspective is giving your story. So I don't fucking know that much. I'm 29 years old. I haven't been on this planet that long. I don't believe that I have a tremendous amount of advice to give. But what I know is what I've experienced in the last 29 years. So my perspective is seeing all the things that I've seen, calculating what that means in my head, and then regurgitating that and what I think based upon what you just told me. So I try to give as much perspective as possible in different scenarios to help someone do it. But advice to me is you should close your iPad and go do this other thing. And I don't ever know what that other thing is to tell someone, and I don't ever want to be in a place to do that.
Cool. So I think that's a good place to stop. Is there somewhere that people can keep track of you? I know you said you're doing some speaking and those kinds of things.
Yeah, check out my Instagram, just Justin Rezvani, JustinRezvani. I'm pretty active on that platform. I'm active on Twitter, so you can find me in that place. And if I could be helpful for you, just send me a message. I'll be in LA and I live in Venice. So
cool. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Yep.